I did not end up accepting my full-time offer at the Big Four. There was a huge moment last summer where I was like, I regret everything I did in college. I wish I could go back and do things differently.
Welcome to the Internship podcast. So excited to have you.
So excited to be here.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, definitely. So hi, my name is Crystal. I am a 22-year-old currently working as a product analyst at TikTok and also balancing content creation on the side. And I know we'll dive into this, but I started creating content when I was in college, graduated during the pandemic. And yeah, it's been a wild ride just learning how to navigate my 20s and just love talking about that in my socials as well.
I'm so excited to chat today because you just graduated. And I usually am talking to people who are older than me or several years in their career. And I'm so excited to get the fresh mind of a young grad of this time. You also went to college during a pandemic, right?
Yes,
What was that like for you?
Yeah, so the pandemic hit halfway through my sophomore year, and I was having the time of my life, starting to finally feel the groove of what my social circle was like really getting involved on campus. And then all of a sudden, COVID happened, and then we were all sent home. I am originally from the Bay Area, so for me, I went to college at Berkeley, and so it was kind of weird going back home for a little bit because I felt like it was just so odd going from, fully being independent finally and then going back home. But yeah, university, it was all on Zoom.
Oh, man.
And it was really hard adjusting at the beginning just because I think for a long time I kind of resented it in a way where I felt like it was taking away from my college experience. And I did ultimately actually end up graduating a semester early because of that, because a lot of us took summer classes, which was nice. But
and you graduated during the pandemic?
Yes.
So you didn't get to walk?
I did actually end up walking.
Oh, okay,
so
cool.
I graduated a semester early, but then ended up walking May 2022, which was last year.
Oh,
so I got to walk with my class, which was nice. I think we were the first batch out of the pandemic, basically, to be able to walk in person, have a crowd and everything, because I know
at least you got that.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, good.
Which was nice, but I do feel like my college memories are really only centered around my freshman year and my sophomore year. So I think in that sense, it was kind of weird, just thinking that I didn't have the full experience.
Yeah, and you've been in the Bay Area basically forever.
Yeah.
So have you lived anywhere else?
No, so I was born and raised in the Bay Area, went to school in the Bay Area. I actually, when I was applying to colleges in high school, there were only 2 Bay Area schools I applied to, which is Berkeley and Stanford. And all my other schools, all 15 other schools were in the East Coast or in LA. And everyone in my friend group was like, you're going to be that person that's going to move the furthest away. I ended up being the closest one to home.
Oh my God, no way. You were trying to leave too.
I was trying to leave, desperately trying to leave.
That plan did not work for you.
No, it definitely did not. And then I thought after graduation I would find a job in New York, but I'm still stuck in the Bay Area.
I mean, if you're in tech, sorry, you're here.
Yeah.
This is where it is,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is definitely the center and the hub for, I think at least definitely the first step of the career in tech.
Yeah. Do you feel like being in the Bay has specifically helped you advance in the tech industry faster? What unique privileges do you think you got growing up, and what did you not like about being in this tech bubble? Because I grew up in the Bay Area too, which is why I feel like I can ask these questions so pointed and biased. So yeah, I want to hear about that.
Yes, so I think growing up in the Bay Area is definitely a very unique experience, specifically growing up in the Silicon Valley. I think, when you go to public school in the area, I'd say 80% of parents do work in tech. It's a very tech-focused curriculum in the sense that I remember starting from kindergarten onward, we had dedicated Mac time where we learned how to use Apple products just because Steve Jobs was the alumni of my middle school. So I think in that sense, they really indoctrinate you from young in terms of learning how to use different tech products. And then I remember in high school, our field trips would consist of going to all the tech companies nearby.
Oh my God.
I know, which is just, I know it's a lot.
Why am I not flinching at all while you're saying I'm yep, same, did that, got it.
I think it's just a standard of growing up in the area. Actually, surprisingly enough, I did not expect myself to go into tech because of that. I think growing up, I actually somehow ended up in robotics when I was in 8th grade. I wanted to try it out for fun and had a really traumatizing experience in terms of being one of 2 females on the team. And I remember on the day of the competition, I think learning how to code was never something that instantly clicked for me. Like I knew like if I put in enough effort, it would work. But I think I wasn't like the other people on the team that, somehow like all of a sudden they would get it. And so I remember on the day of the competition, the 4 guys on my team were like, you can just cheerlead on the side. And I think as a 13-year-old, that kind of already molded my mindset into being like, okay, maybe I'm not cut out for this. And then I remember specifically freshman year of high school, we had a LinkedIn field trip where we learned how to code for a day. And I remember just being really frustrated that I couldn't get it on the spot, and the engineer ended up taking over my project. So I think as a 14-year-old at that point, I actually eliminated going into CS, like going into anything in that field, because I just felt like I wasn't good enough for it at the time. As like a young teenager, just being told all of that. So it wasn't until college when I picked up a couple product design classes and like learned how to code HTML, CSS, JavaScript on a very basic level that I was like, wow, this is actually very interesting. But it was my senior year when I was taking electives. So I think in that sense was when I started opening up my mind to maybe pursue something in tech and realizing that I don't need to be the most technical person to have a career in this field.
It's actually so wild how such small interactions when you're younger can shape the way you see yourself and what the value you're supposed to provide to society for like the rest of your life. Like, and I think we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about how these like microaggressions when we're younger have such a heavy influence on like how we perceive ourselves. And I deeply believe that like anyone can be anything if you set your mind to it. But if you genuinely believe you can't be something because someone told you, or you were like wrongly exposed to a field based on like situational environmental dynamics, like you being like the only like one of the 2 only females on your team, like then you kind of like believe that it's definitely really hard to reverse.
It is.
You're not the only one, by the way, that I've like heard say this. Yeah. And then the other thing you mentioned, you were like, oh, like I discovered product design when you were a senior in college, and then you consider tech. And that's so, it's honestly parallel to me because I also rejected tech for most of my life. I was like so cringed out by it. It's like when you get hyper exposed to something, you're like, I need to like,
you need to step away from it.
Yeah, exactly. And I also discovered, potentially pursuing a career in tech. I was dabbling in like computer science classes when I was a junior, which felt like too late, but also just in time. Yeah. Did you feel similarly?
I did feel that way. Actually, I felt more on the spectrum of being like I was too late to it. And I think there was a lot of moments where I regretted not having taken up these classes earlier. But I was just really intimidated by the curriculum in the first place. And also because of like the childhood trauma that I had, I was like,
that is real.
I will not be taking up these classes. And then it was my last semester. And then I was like, I have extra space in my schedule. I'm just going to take up a couple of classes that seemed interesting to me, and ended up liking it. So if, it's really easy to go back and say like, I wish I had discovered it sooner. But I think at the end of the day, it did work out in the sense that I think even now in my job, I'm still learning like SQL and like a bunch of other more like, I guess you could say like technical skills. And I think like it truly is like never too late to learn.
What's wild is that when we're in college, we think that, oh, if it's near the end of a college, like that's our only time to learn something new in the world, and after that it's too late. I am literally like multiple years into my career learning brand new things that I've never learned of, and it really puts into perspective that, oh, actually it's never too late, and learning something at the end of college is actually very early in the lifespan of everything you're gonna do in your career. But it's so funny how in that moment we think that, oh, it's like over, like we missed our chance, which is like so not true, and now we know that.
I think it's because like everyone always hypes up like, at the end of college it's like you're basically set out onto this like odd space where everyone kind of only hypes up until after college, and then they're like, yep, college is the peak, like you can't really do anything afterward. And I think having that mindset, especially when you're in college, results in a lot of angst toward the end of it, where you're like, oh, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. And I think even after I graduated, when I was feeling lost because I did not end up accepting my full-time internship offer at the Big Four, there was a huge moment last summer where I was like, I regret everything I did in college. I wish I could go back and do things differently. I wish I took up these classes, took up this minor. And I think looking back now, it's natural to feel that way, especially when you feel like you're so isolated with the pandemic and everything. But things truly work out for a reason, and I'm glad to be where I am at today.
Yes. I mean, also you rejected a Big Four. Like that is not easy to do. You have to be extremely self-aware and really know what you're looking for in your career. Most people just take that and go like, I got something, like, especially in this economy. Like, why did you end up rejecting that? And I mean, now it's like, in retrospect, it's like, oh, okay, your job's really sick. You work at TikTok, you're doing a job you like. So in retrospect, you should say like, that makes sense. But in that moment, like, how would you have had that conviction in yourself and know like, oh, okay, like if I say no to this, I'll eventually figure it out.
Yeah, definitely. So I think just backtracking a little bit, junior year before the summer when everyone's out and about doing their internships, I remember that was the peak of like COVID when everything was fully like on lockdown. I was just in my room, like attending university classes. And the business school that I was in, a lot of the professors are from the Big Four. So for a lot of them, especially they were previously partners at these firms, they were strongly advocating for their students to apply for an internship there. So I think naturally, especially because I am also the older child and I feel like I'm always the guinea pig for everything, I had really no guidance in terms of
God, girl, same.
I know, looking for internships, like navigating the job hunt, like everything. So I kind of like interviewed out of a whim and got the job and was like, you know what, I got something, so that's going to be my summer internship. So I was at PwC as an assurance intern, which is like audit. And I remember for a long time, I was like, you know what, accounting classes aren't that bad. And I did the summer internship, which, to be fair, I think summer internships are really more about hyping you up to make sure that you accept the return offer. And at the time, I was like, you know what, this isn't that bad. It's not what people say it's cut out to be. And then a lot of the associates on the team that I was on were like, you should come back to do the winter internship so you fully understand what you're getting yourself into. And I could see that they were not happy in their jobs. And so with graduating early in winter, I decided to apply for the winter internship just because I was like, you know what, I have time and I don't want to dive into a full-time position right away, just to make sure that I know what I'm getting myself into. And I'm so glad I did that, because that winter internship, I saw how bad it was during busy season, and I was like, there's absolutely no way I want to do this for the rest of my life. And so it was a really scary decision in the sense that I thought I had everything figured out when I graduated. And then after the internship in March, I was like, this is definitely not what I want to do. And I know I want to pursue something else. But then with that comes the pang of like everyone on LinkedIn at the time, like my peers were posting where they were going to work after college. And I think the thing about LinkedIn is that, especially as a fresh grad or soon to be fresh grad, everyone's like, I am so excited to be working at XXX company. And at the time when I had just given up my full-time offer, I think there was a lot of moments where I was like, did I make the wrong decision? Did I make a mistake here? You know, impulsively kind of doing that. But it wasn't impulsive. Like it took me like a couple of weeks to think about it. I talked it out with my parents and ultimately decided it wasn't the path I wanted to pursue. I also did not want to study 1,000 hours for the CPA exam. So at the time, I kind of like reverted back to my interests in, you know, a little bit of product design and like just was trying to explore what other options there were. I also did a bit of marketing here and there, like in college. So I think after talking to a bunch of people, I was like, you know what, I know I want to pursue something in tech, but whatever ends up being out there in the job market is what I will take.
Yeah. No, I mean, social media is like 1/16 of the story. Like that's probably the only time they've ever posted on LinkedIn, right? And I bet all of them are probably at some point in their career, they're going to go, whoa, like, is this actually what I want to do? And feel this point of unhappiness and needing this time to like transition or whatever. Like the same thing happened to me. Like I worked for 3 years and I was like, actually, this doesn't really make sense for me. And it was basically this like thought in the back of my head for a long time. It's just a matter of when you're going to address it. You decided to address it immediately. Other people wait later. And there's no wrong answer for that. But it's just like, and it's painful no matter where you are in your career. Like when you don't have a job and when you're trying to transition, you're going to look at everyone else and you're going to think, oh, wow, like they have a better job than me, or they actually have a job and I don't have a job. That makes them better than me. But like, it's only for a brief, uncomfortable moment. And then you rise that on top, right? And
it's always that comparison trap that everyone falls into regardless of whatever you end up accomplishing. I think that at every stage of life, you're always going to find yourself in that trap if you're not cognizant of it.
Totally. No, it's so true. And really just focus on yourself. Like don't look at other people, and like that's the best way.
Which is so hard though.
Oh, literally impossible. Like I totally suck at it. Like I will sometimes endlessly scroll Twitter. I'm like, that founder raised, that investor invested in that company, and I'm like, wait, why am I doing this? Like if I look within, like, and the thing is, we don't compare ourselves to people who are less than, right?
We always compare ourselves to people that are either years ahead or like way more accomplished and like just have way more experience.
I know. I don't know why we do that.
It's just an unfair level or playground that we're comparing ourselves to.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is people are like, oh, you have imposter syndrome or you don't. Everyone has imposter syndrome.
Yes,
There's no such thing as not having imposter syndrome. It's like how you deal with it. Like, do you deal with it by being negative and not being action oriented, or do you deal with it by, oh, well, I might not be skilled at that today, but I can work on it and I feel confident and I feel positive that I can be and I'm capable. And like, that's just a much better attitude around it.
Exactly.
So like, let's just like actually try to be positive and not like deny that we have imposter syndrome, or just accept we have imposter syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so you ended up like leaving the Big Four. And so now you have this like open space to explore. And you said you were dabbling in product design.
Yes.
What was that process like? And then how did it land you your role at TikTok?
Yeah. So those couple months after I rejected my full-time offer were hard in the sense that I knew kind of like what space I wanted to be in, but had no idea what role I really wanted to go for. And with the job market at the time, which is still bad, but I think at the time, like a lot of people were telling me like, you kind of just need to get your foot in the door and then dabble with something and then see where you can end up like transferring to, hopefully. So for me at the time, I initially thought I wanted to go into product design just because I had joined like a couple like boot camps online that I thought I would want to do, and then also had done like self-studying classes, like did a couple electives in college. So for me at the time, it felt natural that I would try to go into that path. But then I tried applying for a lot of roles, and I think especially as a fresh grad, it's really hard. They really do look at your major, and coming from just a strictly business major, I don't think that's like the first choice in terms of a product design background, considering I did not have an internship in that either. So I think after realizing that it would be a really hard path to jump into, and at the time, I think I was just really desperate to get my foot into the door already, because I was kind of giving myself this really like strict timeline, which I have no idea why I was doing that. I was like, you know what, it's time to explore other options that I have maybe in the product space, but has something better to do with like my business background. And so I was looking into product management at the time, actually, because I had no idea really what that entailed. And a lot of people were throwing that word around. Quickly realized that you probably need experience for that. And then was looking into like product operations roles, which is what I ended up applying to at TikTok. At the time, they actually rejected me the first round because my years of experience did not match up. But then I applied a couple months later when one of my friends told me that something opened up, and it wasn't really clear what years they were looking for, so might as well try, and I ended up getting it.
Wow.
Actually, funny story enough, the day that I got that is actually the week that I had kind of decided that maybe I would take on social media full time, because at the time, no one was getting back to me. I spent all summer last summer in Singapore, like literally like crying every single day, applying to jobs. It was just really bad. And I realized that my parents were fully supportive of me, you know, trying social media out, which I was really surprised by, but they were like, it's not worth your mental health and your emotional health to be so caught up in the whole job hunting process, when they were like, you don't have the worst case scenario. You do have something else that you could potentially grow into and like dabble with. You're still so young, like corporate will always be there for you. So actually that week was the first week that I was fully accepting finally of potentially dabbling into social media full time. And then that's when I got the email from TikTok saying they wanted an interview.
Wow, it's funny. The second you don't want something is when the universe will give it to you.
Yes, 100%.
You have to literally let go.
You have to learn to let go.
Wait, that's so... That literally happens all the time. I feel like that's happened to me several times where I'm like, all right, now I'm over it. And then that's when things happen.
Yes.
Like when I was grinding for an internship in college, and this was like for a software engineering internship. I did not know how to code. So I was literally teaching myself and interviewing, and like I don't know why I was like completely delusional. I was I'm just gonna get this, like it's gonna work out. And then after like doing over 100 interviews, spending months on it, I was like, well, this was art. This was kind of like a failed like thing. Why did I even try to do this? Like honestly, and I wasn't that sad about it because I was like, well, it was a ridiculous feat anyways. And the second I literally decided to not care about it, I started doing amazing in interviews, and I landed a job the week later. Like it was 100%. Wild. It's so mindset related. It's you have to just, if you care less, it just comes out differently.
It does. Because I think when you stop attaching your identity and your self-worth to something like a job, for example, is when I think you're able to be more naturally yourself. And I think like that energy could attract, I don't know, like the right opportunity to come at the right time, which usually comes at the most unexpected time.
So true. And also, girl, I was crying every day too. So that's not just you.
No one talks about, I think like in those moments,
we all do it. You feel, because it feels like, what is my self-worth if like I can provide no value to society? And then you make it so serious. It's like not that deep.
Exactly.
Like, why do we make it so deep?
I think it's just hard because like when you are applying for jobs, you're also on LinkedIn, and then LinkedIn, you're seeing everyone else, what they're up to, again, with the whole social media highlight reel. And so I think that really brings down your self-worth naturally when you're just always constantly scrolling because you're trying to find a job, but then you can't do that without also seeing what other people are up to.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is we grew up in the Bay Area around our family who supports us. Like, we're privileged enough to take a back seat and be like, okay, we're not gonna be homeless. There's so many other people who it's way more serious for that they don't have a job. Like, they actually don't have a home or can put food on the table. Like, that's not us. We don't have to like make it such a dramatic thing. We're also very educated, went to top schools. Like, it's obviously going to work out at some point. And if you actually have that mindset and you like have more of that long-term goal of like, I'm going to take what makes sense for me. I'm not going to take anything out of desperation, because if you circulate that mindset of I'm desperate, I'm pathetic, and you really circulate that negative mindset, you might just take something actually that, you know, isn't right for you. And it's like funny because the reason why you attracted the best job for you at this really cool company was like when you let go. And when you can focus on the long term and you can focus on really getting what you want in the future, you're much more likely to get that thing. It'll just be like 1, 3, 6 months delayed, because whatever it is you're shooting for is probably hard to get. It's probably not like a Starbucks barista job. Like it's probably actually a legit job, 6 figures. People need to be patient with themselves and understanding of the fact that none of this stuff happens overnight. Like, most people can spend years getting a job. It's just a matter of, do you spend those years in college? Do you spend those years after college? Like at what point do you put in the time? And I think a lot of like younger people are realizing that, oh, you got to put in the few years no matter what. Why don't we put in those few years in college? Why don't we take gap semesters? Why don't we do internships part-time during school, so they can, because you don't have experience, don't know how you, that's so simple. I mean, you learned that, right? If you don't have something to show you can do the job, how can someone trust that you can do the job? And the best way to do that is actually working at something. It can even be like a part-time
definitely
capacity, like a startup that no one knows about, that's still showing, hey, I did the job, someone trusted me, someone paid me, and then you have a portfolio to show at the end of it. But super cool though that you're now in product ops, or you're a product analyst or product ops?
So I started off in product operations, and then 2 months ago transitioned into more of a product analyst role, just to better fit the team's needs that I'm on, and was kind of thrown into that situation. I know I get that question sometimes where people are like, how did you get into like product analyst? And to be fair, the really honest truth is I was thrown into it and had to learn on the job, like what exactly I was supposed to do, still learning what I'm trying to do, honestly. And I think an important point, going back to, you know, seeing everyone's social media highlight reel about like their job and their their job, I think a lot of it also is just to remember that no one's job is as perfect as what it seems online. I think like there's a lot that goes behind the scenes. You only see a couple seconds out of someone's day. And I know it is so hyped up, especially on social media, to realize that, you know, like you kind of like look up to other people thinking that that is like the perfect job, like the dream opportunity. But honestly, no one's job is perfect. No one's first job is perfect. And I think we're all still learning and growing and figuring out what exactly we want to do even.
Yeah, that's so real. Okay, I have a new question. What's the difference between product ops and product analyst?
Yes.
The role specifically.
Yeah, so for product operations, it was more like helping out the PMs that I work with on different like operational tasks. And I'm not going to go into exactly like what I do, but just like more like helping them set up like stuff that needs to get done in order to reach specific users, or like to make sure that like some of the features are like being taken into account correctly. And then in terms of like product analyst, I'm helping out with like more like insights and metrics from like different product features performance, and just helping them with those recommendations in terms of like what's been going on like in a specific market, and then helping them, or like helping the PMs like have the information so that they can make the decision for the roadmap and what they need to do better in the next feature launch or like the next campaign.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so what's the future for Crystal? Is it, climb the corporate ladder at TikTok? Is it maybe try another role? Is it maybe you one day want to do social media full time? Like, what does that look like?
So I think I have thought about this, and I think right now I haven't even hit 1 year yet. So I'm just trying to ride the wave and see how things go. Of course, I think like just me being me, I feel like I'm inclined to go in so many different directions. So a part of me right now in the future would love to be in the PM space. I think especially somewhere at TikTok where I'm truly passionate about the product. Like I think especially being in the creator side of things, I think I would love to be able to help influence that roadmap and like the different features that are launched to help improve the creator experience. I think that's definitely something that I would be very passionate about. But then the other part of me is like, I think I'm just someone who's always full of ideas. And I think especially being influenced by the Bay Area, there's a part of me where it's like, I would love to dive into my own business one day, try something out again with the creator economy. I think that's something that I'm just really passionate about. And at the end of the day, I am trying to, like enjoy the work that I do and then not have it feel like it's like work. I think that's the best combination. In terms of social media full time, I have thought about it, but ultimately I think what I enjoy having social media as its own thing on its side outside of my corporate job is that it's always been a creative outlet for me, and I kind of view it that way. Of course, it is a job at this point, but for me, like I really try to view it as my creative outlet. It's somewhere where I express myself, can share, my different interests outside of like work. And I think like for the foreseeable future, I want to keep it that way while dabbling in something else that isn't directly, like editing videos, like posting content. I think it's really fun, but for me, it's not something that I can see myself doing full time in the foreseeable. Of course, never say never, but right now it's not something that I want to do full time.
Yeah. I also genuinely think you'd be a really great product manager.
Thank you.
And just coming from an ex-product manager, because there's basically two things you need to be really exceptional at a job. One is like you need to be data driven and really like use numbers to advantage to inform strategy. That's literally what you're doing. You're literally informing PMs on the data and they use those numbers. So one, you're getting that scale, which is so important. Yeah. Understanding numbers, right? The second thing is product managers have to make a lot of decisions every single day. They have to rely on their intuition. And if you're going to be a PM specifically in the creator economy, or if that's what excites you, like you have so much inbuilt intuition on what creators are looking for. Like you're a creator yourself, right?
Yes.
That is a insane combination.
I would hope so.
No, for sure. You're doing all the right things to get there, and you're already in the like product org. So it's just, you're just one transition away. Like I totally see that for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really hoping so. I think I get intimidated by like people talking about like the years of experience they need and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I'm just waiting for the right opportunity to come up.
Yeah. I mean, years of experience for product management is like such a debated topic. I started PM with 0 years experience, specifically started an APM program. So that's like built for people with 0 years experience. But I do actually think that you can join early stage startups as a product manager without any experience, because at that stage, it's very much less like day-to-day is operationalized and there's like a set way of how to do things, and it's like very strategy focused. It's more of like grind, execute, get shit done, figure it out. And when it comes to like figuring things out in a startup, you just have to be like willing to work hard and care about it, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
That's actually all you need to be a PM at startups. You don't actually need those years of experience. Again, it depends on like what type of company you want to work for, but if you're down to just get that experience on your resume and work anywhere, like it's actually, and I think a lot of people don't realize is that, you can go to a startup not as a PM and transition into that role pretty easily, because as a founder myself, I don't really care like what you call yourself. Call yourself a product manager. Like I want you to like get shit done, help grow my company. And product managers own products end to end, and so naturally if you like basically self-assign yourself this role at this company, like you're gonna add a ton of value that the founder is gonna be like really excited about, and also you'll be able to put on your resume now that you're basically a product manager, and you can like hack your way into that role, you know?
Definitely. I'll keep that in mind.
Cool. Well, I want to hear more about like how you started in social media specifically. Like what was the first time that got you interested in creating content? And I know your niche is more like lifestyle content as well. So like, how did you land on that niche specifically?
Yes. So I think we can backtrack quite a bit for this. So growing up, my mom never let us watch TV, me and my sister. She was very much like, you're doing your after school extracurriculars and I'm going to stack your schedule so you don't have time to watch TV. So in middle school, when I had my first iPod Touch, I was just binge watching YouTube because at the time it was all the beauty influencers, the OG YouTubers. And I think...
But you were binge watching on your little iPod?
Yes.
Like you were looking at a screen?
No, like the iPod Touch, like the one that's like... touch screen.
Why did my head go to the like little nano? I don't know why.
Those were like way before.
Okay. Oh God, I'm not like that much older than you.
No, you're not. But I think at the time is when that whole thing where I was just like so captivated by like these vlogs. At the time it was very curated. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like these people were waking up in full on makeup, like in their videos and stuff. But I think that's when I kind of had the inkling where I was like, you know what, maybe one day I want to do this because it seems really fun. And I think growing up, I've always loved taking photos and videos wherever I would go. I would take my dad's phone and like try to take photos. So I think naturally creativity has always been an outlet for my expression. I'm not someone who grew up loving to use my words. It was more so through actions and like photos and drawing and like art. So in high school, I remember trying to start social media and then my mom quickly shut it down and was like, you need to focus on school. And I don't want you being so young, being on the internet, because granted, it is a very scary place, I think, especially when you don't know what you're doing. And so I was very upset about that. But then my junior year, actually, end of junior year of high school, I decided to start a makeup account on Instagram without my parents knowing. And so I would post my makeup looks because at the time I was very...
Is this your current account?
No, different.
Okay.
So I was very much into like creating makeup looks that I would get influenced by the YouTubers that I was watching. And at the time, I think social media was heavily revolving around beauty influencers. So I would try like all these different looks on myself. And then I ultimately ended up actually starting my high school prom business where I would do people's prom makeup. And I actually had quite good business from that. My senior year, especially when I learned how to drive.
Wait, so how many customers did you have?
Yeah, I think like my junior year wasn't that much because my mom would have to take me, and I don't think she really liked doing that for me, unless it was like my friends that I knew. But senior year,
you were like, a cost is begging my mom to drive me.
Yeah,
not a very scalable business.
Yeah. But then my senior year, when I learned how to drive and was driving around myself to school and stuff, after school I would go to just like at first it was close friends and then suddenly friends of friends or people that just found my account.
Oh my God.
And yeah, it was a great way for me to earn side income during my senior year of high school.
How much did you charge them?
I remember at the time it was probably like between $30 to $50.
Wait, that's actually a lot for like a high schooler. Yeah, dude, that is impressive.
Yeah, but I think at the time I knew that Sephora and like Ulta were charging like $70. So I was like, I'll charge below that and I'll come to your house.
Yeah.
Because I was like, the distance has to be certain miles away.
Right, you were like business minded from a very young age. Like you've been like on this.
Yeah, so got pretty good business from that. And then college, I joined a sorority and ended up doing it still a little bit my first year, but then quickly was like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's a lot of effort and makeup looks take a long time. So I think that would be actually my first experience with social media. And then my sophomore year, so I interned in Singapore for 9 months, or my freshman year summer, I interned in Singapore for 9 months in a marketing position because I believed that everyone was having an internship at the time at some small companies. So I went to Singapore, which is originally where my family is from, did a marketing internship, was there by myself for the first time for 9 weeks because usually my family comes with me. So out of boredom, because a lot of my cousins are way older than me, I only see them on the weekends, I was like, you know what, I'll just document like my health and wellness journey and like different cafes I go to. Because at the time I was very interested and into health and wellness, like healthy eating, like recipes, like stuff like that. And I think this is the first experience of me actually being by myself. So I was like, creating my own recipes and doing all of that. So that summer 2019 is when I started my Instagram account. Did not take it seriously at all. It was kind of more like I have this picture here and there. And then my sophomore year of college, I remember, especially during the pandemic when everything shut down and like we were all forced to be inside, I was like, I'm just going to pick it up again and see what I can do out of it. At the time, Instagram Reels had just come out, I believe. So I started dabbling with video because growing up, I really loved editing videos too. And Reels at the time was really taking off because it was a new feature on the platform. And because of that, I quickly grew like my first couple thousand followers pretty fast, I'd say, compared to how hard it is right now. And that was when I discovered that it's something that I genuinely love doing every single day. Stuck with it, was very much health and wellness focused up until I graduated from college, because when I graduated from college and was going into the corporate world, I was like, I am not spending this much time. I don't have the time to be spending like or I don't have the time to be spending in the kitchen all day, like creating new recipes, like forming all of these elaborate like wellness mindset activities going on in my schedule. So I switched over to lifestyle, and it's stuck since because I think it's a very natural way for me to have content without putting so much pressure to like set everything up. And it's more so my mindset around it is instead of curating your life for content, instead of curating your life for content, create content based on your life. Right. And so I think because of that, it's been really easy to kind of like have it on the side while still maintaining that balance between creativity and also treating it like a job now.
That is so true, because I will like be like, okay, these 2 hours I'm setting aside to like make an educational video. Like that is definitely creating a life for my content versus creating content on my life. Yeah. And doing so, I was always under the impression, oh, if I have to like do like day in the lives or like film my life, that's going to take joy out of living. So I don't want to do that. Yeah. But you're basically saying that you're already doing that with your time.
You might as well
take a picture, take a video of it. That's really interesting. I definitely do think that's an art and a practice. I don't think it's as easy as you make it sound, but something to really think about, like how do we actually develop that skill where we are mindlessly capturing our lives and posting on the internet, because we want to like grow a personal brand and grow our audience. I think you also being on Reels right when it like came out is probably like really critical to you getting really early on the platform, getting early in the algorithm. Like so many creators I talked to today are like, it's impossible to grow on Instagram. They put so much energy and time to that. Do you have any tips for those creators who are like trying to start accounts now? Like how can they grow fast?
Yeah, definitely. I have a couple friends who are starting accounts too, because it's something they want to potentially discover and like explore. And my biggest tip is honestly, I think the hardest part is just showing up for yourself. It's really hard at the beginning to be consistent because you're so confused on like what your niche is. Or if you're someone like me who overthinks a lot of stuff, you're like, well, I don't know what I want to be known for. And like, you won't know until you start, or like, it takes time to really discover what your personal brand is. And that changes over time too with different phases of life. So right now, the best you can do is show up for yourself, try a bunch of different things and see what really sticks, what really does well in terms of like performance metrics on your platforms. And then also, I think right now, a lot of platforms are pushing short form video if we're trying to be technical. So my biggest tip for Instagram especially is Reels helps you reach accounts and other people a lot faster than just solely posting photos. Like, of course, throw in photos in the mix. That's what Instagram is known for. Like, I love my photos, but short form videos are really what it takes. And I think there is also strategy in terms of when people ask me how to balance everything. Truthfully, honestly, a lot of my content is recycled into different forms. And what I mean by that is, for example, I'll film a morning routine on the weekend, but then I'll take chunks of it. For example, the part I'm getting ready, you can post a get ready with me for that. You can post the whole morning with it. You can post an ASMR. You can post one with the voiceover. You can post it into a whole day vlog, because sometimes I'll just insert it with other clips. And honestly, it looks like my typical day to day, and no one's going to know that it's a different morning than the day. Yeah. And I think when you start, like, it's like more about, work smarter, not harder. Right. In that sense, especially if you do have a full-time job, I think there are so many ways that you can go about creating content and finding what works for you. But at the end of the day, when you first start off, please have fun with it, because when it does grow into something bigger and something that is genuinely maybe more like a job, like, it sometimes may take the fun out of that. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, it was so fun doing it when it wasn't monetized. But at the same time, I'm so glad that it is monetizable now. It's a great perk to have.
Totally. And I imagine you work with a bunch of brands and companies, right, on the side. Yeah. How do you decide which ones you want to work for? And how often do you take these deals? Especially because I imagine it takes time to execute on what they're looking for, right? Yes. On top of a job, on top of your day-to-day life. How do you make those decisions?
Yes. So when I first started monetizing it, which was pretty quick after I started my Instagram account, because at the time, again, I think it was a lot easier, not necessarily saying super easy as the OGs, but at the time, a lot more small brands were looking for smaller creators. And I think the whole ideal about collaborating with small creators was starting to become a thing. So at the time, I remember when I first started off, I was just so amazed by the fact that people were reaching out for money. It was like, it could have been like $100. And I was like, wow, this is like great. And so I was taking on a lot of opportunities that I just figured was like really cool to have. And I think in retrospect, it also helped me build up like important skills, like learning how to negotiate over time, learning how to look over contracts, because some of these companies are really sneaky on you, learning how to advocate for yourself, do all the admin work that goes behind the scenes. And fast forward now, I think ever since maybe like a year and a half ago is when I started becoming super picky about the brands that I'm working with, because at the end of the day, they do reflect you as a person and your brand, and you don't want to work with a company that may not reflect you. And so I think it's also a very privileged thing to be able to say that, because of course that takes time. Like it doesn't come instantly. Like I think at the beginning, like most creators do end up taking whatever brand partnerships that come across their table. But now I comfortably say like all the brands that I work with, I only really work with brands that I truly would resonate with and I truly use in my day-to-day life. I think that's the perfect combination. And of course, now I do have a talent manager, which helps a lot with like relieving a lot of pressure from contracts, negotiating, reaching out to brands, pitching to brands, because they take care of all of that. And but again, like it was a really good learning process, learning how to look over contracts.
Yeah, I mean, you're not just learning how to be like creative and tell a story, but you're also learning how to do like real life career skills, like negotiation. Has that ever like played a part in you negotiating for this role that you have at TikTok?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not really a confrontational person growing up. So when I learned that my other friends in the creator space were negotiating, or I saw on TikTok that a lot of these social media managers were like, you must negotiate for your contracts, because a lot of the times they will give you a rate in hopes that you'll just take it, even though there is room for you to negotiate. And I think ever since I found that out, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna throw a random number out there. And when I started realizing that brands were taking that, I was like, wow. So there is room to play with it. I don't think right now in the economy it's as well played out because of everyone's tight budgets. But I think a year ago is when I started dabbling with that. And I was like, you know what, like this is how much I know my content is worth, like how much time I put into it. And it really has helped, I think, when it came to the job, when I was interviewing for my job. And then when it came to the HR interview at the end, I was like, I'll try to negotiate. But I knew also it's a bit difficult when you're a fresh grad. You kind of have to take like whatever is on the table for you, because you have 0 years of experience behind your belt. But yeah, I think I've become more comfortable, at least in the sense of learning how to negotiate.
Totally. I mean, it's always worth just trying to negotiate. Yes. The worst case say is no, right? Yeah. I think we always have this fear that they're going to retract the job. Yeah. Like they spent a lot of time and money to find you. Like it's not so easy to get rid of them at that point. So I just say, just shoot your shot, negotiate, ask for what you want. Ask for something random. Honestly, that's higher. Like maybe you're actually happy with the salary, but you might as well just try, and they'll say no, and it's fine. You still have a job.
You tried.
You can say yes to whatever offer in the end they're like won't want to budge on, and it's fine. But also in the process, you like learn a critical skill. Negotiation is so powerful, and not just for your job. It's just life in general.
Yes,
right?
Definitely. Yeah, I think you really learn how to advocate for yourself when you ultimately are working for yourself, because no one's going to be there to advocate for you unless you of course have a manager now. But yeah, I think it was a really valuable skill set to have. Yeah.
And when you get promoted, which I'm sure you get promoted soon, like that is really when these skills are going to like matter and kick in. And I feel like if you are a creator on the side, you actually have that unique practice. Like going from the first role to your second role is so difficult for young people to navigate. Like I didn't like know about negotiation until like several years into my career, that this wasn't even a thing that like I was deserving of doing, which is wild to say. But like I feel like now with content platforms like TikTok and Instagram, like we're discussing this more openly, like, and sharing tips and tricks with each other. And I feel like a few years ago, had I been on these topics, I recently joined TikTok and I recently started watching Reels on Instagram. Yeah. Had I joined these platforms earlier, I don't think that I would have had a hard time negotiating. Yeah, I would have been like, oh, like everyone's doing it, like I'll do it too, like not a big deal.
Yeah,
right?
I learned so much on TikTok. Like it's become a very educational platform. You know, I'm not trying to pull the plug or anything, but truly I think like I've learned so much from it. And I think it's just so valuable. Like even looking back for me, I'm like, I wish I had watched all this stuff even when I was in college or like before then, because it is truly valuable. And I think it's really valuable hearing from genuine people who are like normal people in their day-to-day life and just sharing like their advice and just sharing like their raw and authentic journey.
Yeah. And you post on both Instagram and TikTok, right? I do. How do you like manage that? Do you auto post to one platform or do you do separate content?
Yeah. So my Instagram, I feel like it's more of like my baby because it's what I started off with. And so my Instagram is very curated, I think more so towards my aesthetic side. I love like, you know, my feed and like just like the way that it goes. I don't put as much pressure on it anymore, but there is a consistent pattern of like, you know, I love my neutrals. I love sharing more about like my carousel posts, like my neutral fashion, and then also will throw in like mixes of my reels. And those reels are also cross-promoted and posted on like TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube Shorts. So yeah, my manager was like, you need to start diversifying your content a bit, which I'm trying to do, but I think it's just kind of hard because I'm just trying to do the best that I can with everything. TikTok, on the other hand, I feel a lot more comfortable like talking to the camera, like doing voiceovers. I think it's just more natural that I kind of view TikTok as more of like an open and raw like platform in the sense that I see how other people are on it. And, you know, it's very much more of like a discussion. It's more of like you sharing your story. Whereas on Instagram, I kind of keep like this more like facade, I guess you could say, because it's just like what I'm used to on it. And I think at the same time, I think it's because on my Instagram, a lot of people from my high school and like my college have found me on there. So I think in that sense, I still feel a little bit shy, like posting stuff if I'm talking to the camera or stuff like that, which I know I need to get out of. But yeah, I think because of that, that also hinders like my ability to share more open, like forms of content on there.
No, it's funny. I actually feel the same way. And I feel like it's because on TikTok, everyone's name is like a random.
Yes.
You're like, you could be my friend from high school. I have no idea. And it almost like tricks you into thinking no one's looking at it. It's like a safe space. Whereas Instagram, all your friends are on there and you know which one is watching your stuff, liking it. It makes you feel more reserved, which is so stupid.
I know.
Like
no one's judging you.
No one's judging you. And they're probably looking at you like, oh, wow, she's insanely sick. Like she has so many followers. How do I be like her? Yet we still feel like, again, imposter syndrome.
Yes,
and we feel shy. And I'm trying to work on it too. Like it's not just you, like it's me and honestly everyone else. And also like when it comes to just like diversifying across these platforms as well, I think it's sustainable for full-time creators to actually diversify. I don't think it's sustainable people who have a whole other thing outside of their content. Like you'd rather auto post the same stuff and get some visibility, and you will reach new audiences that way rather than like not do it at all.
Yeah, like right now, like I am trying to diversify on the weekends when I do have more time to play with it. But then on the weekdays, I'm like, you know what, I can only really post what I can post already.
Like you literally have a full-time job.
So I'm doing the best I can. You know, who knows one day when I do work for myself what will happen. But yeah, in the meantime,
I'm excited for you to work for yourself. I think it's gonna happen.
Really, I know a lot of people say that. I think like just I'm someone who is open to a lot of different paths, and I think right now I'm still pretty content in corporate. So but who knows?
I mean, no rush. But I'll just say one thing. I truly believe the next generation of founders are creators first. Like in this next era of tech and building companies, like the best technology, the best engineers don't win. The people who have the biggest audiences win, right? It's with these data sets that you can train LLMs, and where a lot of this differentiation is going to come with all these like AI companies, right? True. Like AI is going to be open source. Like everyone's going to be using the same models. Like how are you able to uniquely attract a set of users, and whatever it is you're building, you can make that proprietary and unique based on the audience, and you're building that audience state. Like I feel very confident you're going to start a company one day. Well, so tell us what it's like to work at TikTok.
Yeah, so I think it's just funny because when I go into work, sometimes I forget that, you know, like it is an app that I truly use every single day. And I think that is the part that I really enjoy, is that I think my drive for working at TikTok stems from my passion from the product. Like, I think as someone who is a creator on it, but also a user, I think it's really interesting for me to see how things are done in the back end of it, like what it's like. I've met really cool people. I am on the younger side at work, so sometimes I feel like it's hard for me to really, I guess, like know what I'm doing, in the sense that like a lot of people are a bit older than me, but it's been amazing. I think the culture is very young and fun. Really love seeing like what new features are going to be shipped out. I think for me, like that's always been like, whoa, like I know beforehand kind of.
Does that actually help you with creating content and getting an upper hand?
I think sometimes if I know something's coming out, like for example, like photo mode right now, I remember I was like, okay, well, maybe I should post more photos. But then also like it really depends on the algorithm, which no one has access to except the algo team. So I think in that sense, but then
is that like really secret? Like the algo team like doesn't talk about it, and everyone's like trying to, oh my God, I can't imagine.
I don't really interact with them, so I can't say for sure. But I think for me, like it is cool to learn about these features, but half the time when I'm creating content, I kind of forget about it because I'm like, I'm just doing what I want to do on my social media platforms. And
that's what's authentic.
Exactly. Yeah. I think like, of course, like it's cool. I think most of the time though, like what I do see is more of the small fixes in the app. But it is cool sometimes that I do actually get asked to give feedback on certain things as a creator. I think it's really cool that I get to have that space and the opportunity to kind of give feedback and just see how things like are molded from there.
Is it like common for employees to also be TikTok creators, or is that like more of a unique thing? Like, do people talk about it? Oh, like she's a creator. You know what I mean?
I know that there's a couple other people who are creators spread within like the company. But I will say, actually, a lot of people actually never used TikTok until they came to the company, I think, just based on the people that I've interacted with. Can't speak for everyone.
Wild.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know that they sometimes will try to ask employees, like, you know what, you should like dabble with it. Like, there have been workshops for employees to figure out how to use TikTok, because I think at the end of the day, like, if you're going to work on a feature, like, it is good to understand like what you're getting yourself into.
Totally.
But yeah, I'm not really sure in terms of like how much people use TikTok at the company.
Well, I can't wait for like in the next decade, like everyone will be a TikTok creator, and then like all their employees will be TikTok creators, just like at Google or Facebook, like all the employees, like they all have Google accounts and Facebook accounts. Like that's going to happen to TikTok eventually.
Yes, I definitely think so.
Do you think that TikTok gives preference to hiring people who are creators or use the platform, or is that not a real thing?
I don't think so. I also don't know what goes on behind the scenes of like the recruitment process. I know personally for me, my manager actually did not think I was a creator seriously when he interviewed me. So I had put on my resume because I think
savage.
I know. So I remember putting as a creator, and granted, I wasn't that huge on TikTok at the time. But I remember, like, it wasn't until someone actually at the holiday party came up to me and was like, "Are you Crystal?" Which I was not expecting, by the way. I was kind of like shocked.
Got yourself a fan, girl.
And so my manager was standing right next to me, and he was like, "Oh, so you are actually a legit creator." Then I was like, "You thought I was joking in my interview process?"
Oh my God.
I don't think I would have lied during that process.
Did you actually say that to him in that moment?
I think my coworker actually mentioned that to him, because I think I was just like, "What?"
Awkward.
Yeah, a lot of the PMs do follow me on my TikTok, which I sometimes get shy about still, because I'm like, I don't know what they think. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't think I post anything extremely controversial or anything like that. I'm just trying to show my day-to-day life and try to inspire, like, you know, little acts of self-care and like little things. But yeah, I think my manager did mention that it would be helpful to have that experience, granted, just like the product features that I'm helping out with. But it wasn't like you need to even have had TikTok in the past to be a part of the company. Yeah,
that makes sense. Would you ever change up your niche outside of like lifestyle, health, and wellness to like something totally different? Like, what's the like wildest idea you've had that's like most far from your niche?
I don't know. I think like I've really loved being in the lifestyle space, self-care space, wellness, I think you can say. I think the only thing that maybe I would change up is potentially in the future, if I do end up working for myself, you know, creating content that is about like, I watch a lot of like female founder content and stuff like that. So I think that's really inspiring. But I think at the end of the day, even if I do dabble into that world, I would still kind of stick true to my roots, because that's what I've always been passionate about. And I would never want to make my TikTok or my Instagram, for that matter, solely about my job or like my corporate side. I think it's really cool to have like other facets of your life that you can share with the world too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, keeps you multifaceted.
Exactly.
Okay, so I ask all the guests this question. If you go back in time and tell your younger self some advice, what would you tell her?
Yes. Be more present. I think it's in this day and age where everyone is so digitally connected, it's so easy to think back and look at the what ifs, like what if I did this, what if I did that, what if I had chosen something else? And it's so easy to also, on the other end of the spectrum, look to the future and overthink things like, I need to consistently grind away just so I can achieve XYZ. But then what you realize, especially in my first year post-grad, is that even if you achieve XYZ, you will always look for more after that. It's this endless rat race. So the best part that you can do, or the best thing that you can do for yourself, is to be more present. I think, as we all know, like, I feel like time is just slipping away, especially post-grad. And I think I'm really trying to work on just being more mindful of what's in front of me. And I think it's super important to also realize that a lot of the stuff that you're doing right now, if you think deeper, is a dream that you had at one point, and you should be proud of yourself and celebrate those small milestones.
Yeah. That's great advice. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Of course.
Wait, that was so fun.
This was so fun. I enjoyed talking to you.